Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Out of Bounds video, and welcome to Heresy. As most of you know, I've taken a little bit of a break making content, but we're back on it with the return of the Dreadnaught. Today, we're going to be exploring all the known areas in the Nether activity and in the first mission, REECE. Don't stress, I'll show you how to get that mission on a second character or with a fireteam member. We're going to start our journey in mission REECE and exploring the Trenchway. It's likely that you don't have this mission anymore, which is okay. If you have a second character, you can grab it on that character, have a fireteam member join on you when you're at the Dreadnaught, and simply leave and rejoin on your main. Subsevertly, you can also have a fireteam member who has this mission and join on them. Quest progress does not track across characters. Our first hole is to our left. Sadly, the King's Fall door to our right, that used to lead to Regicide, is no longer there. You're going to want to head to this door and jump straight up and through. Once you're through, you're in. To our right, you'll see a brand new area, a masked load called Invasion Bay, but we'll check that out in a future episode. Directly below us is a checkerboard pattern if you'd like to check it out. If you walk along this rooftop out of bounds, it's going to lead you into Hall of Souls. That's going to be our next stop on this journey. If you haven't already seen it, Froggy has a great video on these areas as well, as we actively have explored this area together. I wanted to give a huge shout out to Envy, Avi, and the legend himself, Cloud XXXV, for hopping on and exploring with us. With that being said, let's get into the Hall of Souls. Hall of Souls is your ticket out of the map in all locations, whether it's REECE or the Nether. If it's the Nether activity, you're going to want to make sure that in the Trenchway, you don't kill any enemies. This will avoid the joining allies, and it'll keep the progress bar as Nether depth. If it's in mission REECE, you're going to want to avoid the big enemy in the middle of the map. Just simply go around where the King's Fall raid would start, and traverse that way. You're going to want to set your sights on these cords and cables here. You'll know you're in the right direction because an invisible platform will spawn facing the direction. There's a tiny hole here that if you just crouch and sword swing through properly, you'll be able to get through. Now take note here. There are two invisible layers of walls. You don't want to go through this one. You want to go out and around here. Navigator is not required. You can just simply shoot one tangle up in the air and then sword swing onto these wires right here. From here out of Hall of Souls, the box barriers are pretty tight. What you're looking at here is the pathway to the hull breach. We're going to come back to this later and show you how to get into the Masoleum. Follow my path as I show you the routing into the Masoleum load zone. When you land next to this pillar, you're going to land on an invisible floor. Walk backwards until you fall, sword swing, and use your booster to jump straight up. You'll want to jump around these two layers of dirt. Set your sights to this light, and angle just slightly to your left. If you sword swing and jump properly, you'll land right above the pathway. Now make no mistake, I cap my frames to 30 to make sure I don't die to this load, but it's very possible to die. You're going to want to fall into this crevice and walk backwards to hit Masoleum. Now although we hit Masoleum first, we're going to go ahead and explore Hull Breach instead. Masoleum is a very tight offload zone. It's very hard to explore there, if not impossible. The box barriers are extremely tight. I have a very brief section on it later in the video, but make no mistake, it's very hard to traverse. So with that being said, let's explore the Hull Breach and box break the map. Heading back to the Hull Breach pathway, you're going to want to set your sights towards the inside of this cylinder. Once you find this corner, you'll want to fall backwards slightly. When you fall, sword swing with eager edge. Your timing must be impeccable because the death floor is right below you. But once you're through, you can land on this platform and look down to see the Thunderdome and the Ascendant Plane. And don't worry, we'll go check those out in just a bit. If you somehow missed the timing and spawn in map, you can follow my path here to also get under the map from the front of the Hull Breach load zone. The Hull Breach in Destiny 2 has been majorly modified from its D1 counterpart. The Cabal ship that used to lead to the Shield Brothers strike is still here, albeit underground. The box barrier does cut off how far you can go into it, but you can see some remnants of the old areas you would traverse. With that being said, let's go ahead and sync box out. I have Cloud and Infi with me, and if you don't know, Cloud made a video on the old box break method in D1 to slingshot you out of box here. We're going to go to some of the areas that he went to in his video and see if they're the same in D2. I will say right off the bat, the biggest change is this massive Hive sword plunged into the side of the Dreadnaught. We're not sure the implications of it, but it's definitely got something to do with the Heresy Act story. I guess we'll have to see once the act unfolds. And yes, of course, it is solid. You can land on this out of box to set spawn points. Now I know what's on your mind. Let's go out into the middle of the space and see if anything out here is solid. We're gonna go to this crashed skiff and tomb ship. And as you can see, the skiff is not solid, and neither is the tomb ship. From this far out, it's a pretty neat view. You can see Thunderdome way below. Now let's check out the same spot Cloud went to in Destiny 1. Unfortunately, I land a little bit too close and get box pulled here. If I would have landed just a little bit more to the left, I would have been safe. But no worries, we'll sync back out and re-explore. There's one more secret in Hull Breach I'd like to show you, and I think it'll pique your interest. From the same spot on the top of the sword, we're going to head to the right. You'll see a waypoint indicator update, which actually shows a portal way out of box. Now, this isn't the first time we'll see this throughout the video. There's one portal in Masoleum, there's also one portal in Hall of Souls, and there's 3 in Trenchway. We did some exploring and went through all 3 in Trenchway, but you'll see very shortly where this one leads. Right back into the Ascendant Plane. All 3 in the Trenchway also led here as well, so it's safe to assume that every one of these portals out of box leads to this area. You can also use it to get through back to the Hull Breach and spawn you back in box. And as mentioned, this is the portal in the Trenchway load. You can see the one to my right, and there's one to the left that you can't see. Alright, let's do one last sync out in the Hull Breach, and make our way to the last 2 locations here, out of box in the Ascendant Plane and the Thunderdome. Now the Ascendant Plane has kill barriers all around it, so we can't actually get into it, but we can get pretty darn close. So, let's go take a look. And now, let's make our way into the Thunderdome. Now Thunderdome only has a box. There's no kill barriers around it, so you can slip right into it, or drop right in from above. As you can see, it's got a mask load name called Blighted Cyst, which is pretty interesting. The cool thing here is that, since sparrows aren't intended, you can actually get out of the bubble, and you'll see that it has kind of a strange effect. The bubble is tangible to players, meaning you can't go outside of it or inside of it. But when you're on a sparrow, it's intangible. So you can get on top of the bubble, drive your sparrow, and get right back inside. Pretty neat. And with Hull Breach out of the way, let's make our way to the hell that is Masoleum. Back where we left off from hitting the Masoleum load zone from Hall of Souls. As you can see, we're already hitting a lot of barriers. We tried to get around, but the hardest part here is that since they added a new area down below the Masoleum, there is really no way to go under, around, or over with all the barriers. The most we could really explore was down here, and the kill floor is right below us. As we make our way this way, we'll skip ahead just to show you where the portal is as well. If we could sneak out of here, we would be able to go to that portal and see where it leads. But as it stands, we're only able to get sparrows in the Hull Breach in REECE or in the Nether activity in the Asylum load zone. We're going to go ahead and move on to the big star of the show, the Asylum, aka the Darkblade strike area. The Asylum was a load we were trying to get into since day one. It took the collective minds of Froggy, Cloud, Infi, Avi, Cube, and myself, and Noob and Pete, just to get in here. So, let's get into it. In Mission REECE, you're going to want to head to this portal from Hall of Souls. Now, the sequencing has to be perfect here. Huge credit to Froggy and Abby for finding this out, and you're going to want to follow the exact steps I list. You're going to want to reach the portal while you're in the previous load zone. Now, don't pass this gate. Once you pass the gate, you're going to hit the fonts load zone. What you're going to want to do is make sure your spawn point is set at the gate, but you haven't hit the fonts load zone. Make sure you jump all the way back through this portal, touching the ground as little as possible. Jump off the map here, and if you do it properly, it should set your ghost right next to the fonts portal. Once you respawn, hit the load zone and rush through the portal, and you should be able to barrier race the fonts load. And once you push through, you're in. Welcome to the fonts, one step closer to the Darkblade. Now, Froggy has a video on how to get here in the mission Nether. It's going to require a little bit more in-depth tools, and I believe the Hunter subclass with Blink Breach. I won't be going through that in this video, so I'll link his video in the top right corner. Once you're in the fonts, you're going to want to use this hole. I'm pretty sure CloudLXXV found this and mentioned it to us. From here, simply follow my path to hit the Asylum load zone. Once you hit the Asylum load zone, if you don't spawn in map, just go ahead and jump off and don't set a spawn point. Once you're here, you're in. From here, we're going to show how to get into the Darkblade strike, but at the very end of the video, show how to box break this area and get to the mat cannons way out in the distance. Reminiscing through these old hallways reminds me of the D1 campaign, but in the Shrieker room, the doors are closed. Froggy showed me a hole that I believe Cloud found, and this is the hole we'll be using to get out and into the Darkblade strike area. Follow my path as we make this journey. Once you're at the top of the map, you'll want to follow through this hole here. Drop down and immediately swing to your left. Follow the wall as closely as you can, as the box barrier is very close. Once you land here, the lighting should change. Drop down slightly, again hugging the wall. You'll want to drop down once more, swinging forward and immediately to your left. If you have to use a grapple, that's okay, but once you're through, you're in the Darkblade strike area. Now, let's make our way through this gorgeous load zone. It's a shame that it's blocked off, but I could only assume it'll be opened in the future acts of Heresy. The Darkblade strike area has one more secret left to show us before we go box break the Asylum, and it's the Obsolete pattern. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you'll find out very soon. But first, let's drop down to the strike area to see what remains. Now getting through this small hole under the bridge is no easy task. I want to say I died about 10 times. It's a very high kill floor, which means you have to be perfect with your sword swings. But once you make it through, you're free to explore around. Now if you follow my path, you're going to head all the way to the back where the Darkblade normally would spawn. The strange thing here is that his door is rotated, but it's also an Obsolete pattern texture. Pretty neat if you ask me. Last thing to show here is that there's actually two more Obsolete patterns. If you go back up towards the top, you can see these two doors that are blocked from the entry of the strike and are much more easily accessible. Before we show the box break of the Asylum, I wanted to show one pretty neat area in the Hanging Crypts here. I went all the way out to one of the low poly ones just to see how it looked up close. Obviously it's not solid, but it's a pretty cool sight nonetheless. Now, let's move on to box breaking the Asylum. Avi and I found a very strange spot, but it did happen to work. I can go more in detail on this in a future video, but it's extremely hard to get to. All we're going to show now is just the mat cannons up close and some of the intangible structures in the Asylum load zone. Being back in the Dreadnaught in Destiny 2 is bringing back so many nostalgic feelings, and I can't wait to see what else we find in here as the act progresses. In our next video, we'll be going through Invasion Bay and Core of Corruption, so stay tuned for that. But until then, as always, take care everyone. Hey guys, if you like the work that I put into these videos, please subscribe down below. I've also made an out-of-bounds server named Singularity, a Discord server solely focused on out-of-bounds exploration. The join link is in the bio. If you'd like to join, welcome on in.